Zoo FM Brekkie with Dan and Sarah on your Monday morning.
And the Rhino Awards are finished, and one of the winners would have to be Mayor Matt Dickerson. Hey, mate, what a year already, huh?
Yeah, that's right. It was a huge surprise, and obviously having the role of mayor, you don't expect to pick up any awards, and they were very quick to point out that this was the 2021 Rhino Awards.
Yeah.
They made the decision for these awards back in August, September. They had the plate engraved in September, all done ready for the October Awards, which didn't quite happen in October, kind of got pushed forward. So the 2021 Awards are in 2022, because that's the crazy world we live in now. So I kind of felt bad for the whole Chamber of Commerce committee, the board, because that put them in an uncomfortable position. And if they had bumped me for a few years, I would have been okay with that. But they believe in their process well enough that they said, let's go ahead with it.
You look like you're glowing, actually, about that. It's the, what is it, the Emile Saracio Award, which is the Roll of Honour for services to Dubbo. So you've obviously done a lot around here.
Well, apparently, yeah. So, and I did look at some of the previous winners, and even back in the early or the mid-90s when I used to go along to the Rhino Awards, and I'd see people like Joe Snare, Peter Milling, Roger Fletcher, Frank Brennan. They were the kind of the first winners in the 90s, and you go, wow, they are real icons of the business community. And back then, I was much younger than I am now, and I went, oh wow. And I didn't ever think, gee, I hope I can be like that one day. It was just a huge amount of respect for those people. So to join them on that list, you almost feel like you're not worthy, but at the same time, you feel it's a great honour.
Well, congratulations, but we did get you in to talk about council. The new council has had its first meeting. I heard a rumour that you gave the councillors, after all the inductions, some homework. You said, you know what, we're going to have our first meeting. You've got to turn up with something. Is that true? Or is it just
not quite
hearsay?
like that. I want to get some information off you. Where do you hear these rumours from? Who your sources are.
Buy the water cooler, mate.
Now, I did say to councillors, it's a great idea if you bring a notice of motion to a council meeting, because sometimes when councillors get in there, it takes them 6 months, 12 months even, before you get brave enough, because it's a big thing to bring a notice of motion to a council meeting, because you're putting your ideas out there, you're hoping that your fellow councillors have some idea that this is a good idea, you're hoping that the community thinks it's a good idea, so it's pretty open and you're really exposing yourself. So I said, the first meeting, everyone, let's knock it off. Let's just get a notice of motion, whatever you're passionate about, let's get it in there, and so you get straight into the feel of it, and also so the community can see some of the things you're passionate about, and the community can see some action, because that's
what you got voted in for.
Well, that's the feedback I've heard from the community. They want to see councillors getting in there and doing stuff. So, to their credit, they didn't have to do it, obviously. They can do whatever they like. They're councillors. But to their credit, they all come up with an idea. They all brought a notice of motion. And I think they're all good notices of motion. So, there's some little things that are happening already in the community as a direct result of their ideas they've brought to council.
Well, one of those things is a boarding house. That stood out to me. What's that all about? What does it mean for Dubbo?
Well, and that wasn't a notice of motion brought forward. That was a development application that had been lodged by a developer for Dubbo, and that just happened to go through a process and then came out to this meeting, mainly because there were some objections to it. So it's an 18-room boarding house, and as soon as you think of boarding house, you might think of university students, young people maybe drinking too much, maybe being a bit noisy. At the same time, we'd already talked about it in the council meeting that we need more housing, in particular affordable housing in Dubbo. So you think, fantastic, we've got a boarding house coming, we really want that for Dubbo, but then the people that live around that go, sure, we really want this for Dubbo, but just not right here. Go and put it beside Sarah's house or Dan's house. That's a much better place to put a boarding house.
Oh, poor boarding house if they move next to me.
You might go and join them.
Exactly. I was saying this could have been very useful for me when I first got here.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, it may not necessarily just be the affordable housing for really long-term moving your family in, but a boarding house for those singles. I don't know. Will it address couples?
I think the idea of a boarding house is it can be whatever it needs to be for various people. So it's a fairly broad category. It can be TAFE students from around the region needing to live here for a week while they go to TAFE. It could be a couple that moves in. It could be really anything where you're just trying to find some accommodation until you find another house. So really, whoever needs to live there for a day, a week, a month, a year, it'll be how the owners want to run it.
Well, one thing that I noticed in the minutes or the rundown of the meeting that happened, there was a lot of, because you were talking about bravery, about bringing emotion forward, right? The word that came up a lot, unanimously. Unanimously covered. Everyone agreeing, everyone getting the job done and getting the stuff sorted, no infighting and all that done.
Yeah, well, the boarding house was one where it wasn't unanimous. Because one of the things with a DA that comes to council is you want to make a decision on it. You approve the DA or you reject the DA. And in this one, and I don't really, in the past, I've found it not great when someone's deferred a council's decision, but in this case, I think it was the absolute best decision. One of the councillors moved an amendment and said, I'd like to defer this. We're brand new councillors. A DA is a big thing. Whichever way we go, it's a big thing. We want some more time to absorb this because the DA itself is probably 80 or 90 pages long. So you've got to get your head wrapped around that. You get the business papers a few days before the meeting. So one of the councillors moved an amendment to defer it. We'll have an on-site inspection. We'll get more time to wrap our heads around it. So it'll go to the February meeting of council. So the vote for that was actually 7-3 in favour of deferment. So that went through. But again, it's now a council decision. So it doesn't matter the 7-3. It's just a council decision, and we move on with that.
Okay.
Well, it's early days, yeah, but there's lots of things that are going to be kicking into gear now, like beautifying of some local areas, lots of parks. You're talking about.
There's quite a few in there. Regan Park is one of them.
Neighbourhood shopping precincts.
Yeah, multicultural park.
And I'll just pick on a couple of those very briefly. So Regan Park's a perfect example. There was a master plan for Regan Park about 10 years ago. Lots of community consultation went into that, and then a couple of years ago there was a decision made to rescind that completely and get rid of the master plan. And there were some people who spoke at public forum at the council meeting, because you can come along and speak at the council meeting beforehand, and a couple of them spoke about Regan Park in particular, saying we went through all this planning, we went through all this community consultation to get to a master plan, and then just a couple of years ago it was all changed and no community consultation. It was just done at a council meeting with no input from the public at all. So the plan there, that was from Councillor Josh Black, to actually go back and revisit that master plan and look at that. Does it need to be explored further? Was the master plan good? Let's consult with the community and actually talk to the community about that.
Well, one big one, because Wellington is now part of Dubbo's LGA, has been for quite a few years now, but we're still getting used to it.
Yeah.
Policing come up, and this is one that's been going on for quite a few years.
Yeah.
24-hour police presence.
Yeah.
What was the discussion around that? This is like the final thing we'll touch on today.
Sure.
But what was the conversation around that?
Yeah, so Councillor Jess Goff, who's one of the Wellington councillors, brought forward that because it has been, you're spot on, has been discussed in the community of Wellington for a long time. So the idea was, let's make it more than just me going and knocking on Minister for Police's door and say, hey, can we have 24-hour police? Oh yeah, we'll think about it. This was now a council resolution to say, let's A, look at what's there in policing, B, let's look at how we would recommend you would improve that, including the possibility of 24-hour policing, because maybe some other ways, maybe the government will just say, forget about it, we're not giving you 24-hour policing, but we've then got some other positions. So it gives it much more weight. When I go and knock on Minister for Police's door and just say, oh look, I think this is the right way to go, it's not quite as powerful as I've got a council resolution where the council, on behalf of the community, has resolved that this is what we should do. And that just gives it more weight and more strength, but it also gives us a bit more data. That resolution brought forward by Jess wasn't just as simple as we want 24-hour policing. It was, we want 24-hour policing, but we also want some of that data to back it up. And that's really important. Whenever you're having a discussion with government, I want some data to back up what I'm saying.
Well, thank you very much. Sort of peaking without having to sit through a 3-hour council meeting. How long do council meetings go for generally?
They're not too bad. Normally an hour and a half.
Oh, you're home. You're home for maths.
That's right.
All right. Thank you very much, Matt. We'll catch up with you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Sarah.